Welcome to Life Mastery Radio with Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey, the show that dives into the science of higher consciousness with inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. Join Todd, Jackie, and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. It's all right here with stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Now, here's your hosts, Todd and Jackie.
Hey, you know what I'm going to say? It's another groovy day. And why is that? Because that's the way I make it. I decide when I get up before my feet hit the ground, it's going to be a groovy day. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, it just rock and rolls all throughout the day. Now, something might happen, something might change, but I always just think back and say to myself, I started out being a groovy day, and I can change it just with my thoughts. And usually it just happens. And no matter what happens, I look at it differently. I think about it differently, and things turn out differently. So that's the way. Try it. You'll like it. I guarantee it. Be like Mikey.
No one remembers that commercial.
You two laughed, so that means I think you remember.
I remember. I definitely remember.
I think I saw it coming back here not too long ago. But anyway, as always, I have my co-host with me today, the fun, enjoyable, my good friend, co-host. What else can I?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jackie. I'm
Bailey.
Jackie of Todd and Jackie.
The second part. Maybe we should put Jackie first. Jackie.
No.
How are things going? So I see you are standing. And if you remember 2 weeks ago, we had a guest on, I forget his name, dang it.
Stefan
Zavalin, and he wrote a book, Stand and Be Counted. No.
Sit less and move more.
Sit less and move more. And he is part of the movement.
That's right.
And Jackie read his book. I read his book and swore that I would stand more, but look at her, she's standing. And so
Still
Jackie,
standing.
I'm just really curious. How's that working out? Have you noticed a difference? It's 2 weeks now.
Yeah, it's good. You know what? It's interesting that I've been standing while I'm teaching my courses with my students, which is about every day of the week. And I've noticed that I'm actually a little more engaged with them when I'm standing. And I always felt that I was already engaged with them, but it's definitely more so. And I feel like I can exude a little more energy than typical. And the best part is because I start every class with a positive prime session, which is like a musical vision board on steroids. I can dance along with the music now, but I didn't do before. So it's working out good.
That's interesting that you say that, because back in the day when I first started podcasting, I was on a show it was called Holistic Living with Tina Marie.
I remember that.
And we didn't have video. It was all audio. And I had the podcasting helmet on, and it was wireless. And I had a better time walking around my abode, talking and thinking and reflecting my ideas and interviewing guests. And it took me a long time to break out of that and just sit down. And then, of course, video came, and we all thought, oh, we got to be in front of the camera, and we got to sit and
All right.
And here we are in another revelation. And I got to try standing. I'm going to do it. Next show. I have to rearrange all of my stuff for my broadcasting stuff in order to pull that off. So we'll see what we can do.
Well, and I took his advice to not go out and spend a lot lot of money on a desk, one of those desks that allows you to stand.
I have one for you.
I have lots of boxes.
Oh.
I have lots of boxes.
If you're ever in my area, I have one I would give you, and you can try it out. So I forgot about that. I think I still have it. We'll have to see. I'll have to locate it. I want to. How are things going with the kids?
Things are going great. We've got summer camps that we're going to have in person this year. Starting to get some interest in those, and I think with people not being able to afford gas to drive too many places, I think our local area is going to be booming with our summer camps, and that will be good for the kids. We've also got more opportunities for them to be on summits. People are starting to call me and say, we want your youth on our summit. And it's
That's
really
very
exciting
cool.
because the kids are getting that experience and they love it.
Getting chicken skin. That's very cool, Jackie.
It is so cool. And they're starting to realize that this is a good thing. In fact, I was asking one of my students yesterday, because he'd been on the summit the week before, said, Zach, what was your experience? He goes, it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, because it was just having a conversation with somebody. Says, Miss Jackie, you've taught us how to do that. So that's easy. So it was nice. Yeah.
Right on. That is so very cool. If you want to find out more, go to speakfeedlead.org and look for Jackie or Jackie Bailey Speaks, or there are many avenues. You could even go to lifemasteryradio.com or .net and find Jackie. Speaking of which, our show page is on that website today, and you can go there. Any links that we talk about with our guests today will be right there. We have a link to our guest's website. He has a book that we're going to be talking about, and all things about the show will be right there. Later on in the week, we'll turn this video into a YouTube video, and it will be on our YouTube channel. There are a couple of hundred, I think, of the shows that Jackie and I have done. At least there's over 100. I bet
there's got to be. Yeah.
I'll have to review all of those one day. We got to write a book too, one of these days. But while you're on the website, check out both of our books. We both have a book, and you can follow the links. If I can get it, there's her, and there's mine. 6 Keys to Life Mastery and Self-Centered Leadership. She also has a little love letter that she wrote, breaking up with lack, in that other book. So it's kind of cool. You can find all those things on our website. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter. Jackie writes a blog post about the show every week and our guest, and she always comes up with some amazing insight. And that all comes out in our newsletter. It's who's coming on the show, who's been on the show, and of course, her post about the show. So pretty cool stuff. That's all we use that email address for. And check us out, YouTube channel, Facebook, and mostly, please tell a friend about what a cool show that you just watched or listened to. We're on UpSnap Mobile, iHeartRadio, oh my gosh, Pandora, I think by now. And our voices are everywhere. We don't know who's listening. We don't know who they are, and we can't really interact unless they interact with us. So send us a note. Tell us, maybe you know about somebody that's really cool you think would be a good fit for the show. Our email addresses are on the website, so that means you got to go there to find us. Anyway, are you ready for the show today, Jack?
I am. I actually wanted to point out that I met our guest because we were both on the Sing Your Heart Song Summit. This book is a compilation of the presenters at the Sing Your Heart Song Summit, and I sat in our guest's presentation at that summit, and I thought, he's got to be on our show. He's got to be on our show. He's got a story that needs to be heard. So I'm delighted to have him here. Is Dr. Vincenzo Aliberti, and he is a PhD. He's an author, a keynote speaker, and a business strategist with 20 plus years of leadership, corporate strategy, organizational effectiveness, marketing, and sales experience across a variety of industries. Dr. Aliberti is the author of 4 books, actually 5 books now. The first one is Canadian Domestic and International Mergers and Acquisitions. Doesn't that sound interesting? Achieve Your Greatness, 4 Truths and Reflections, Living Lessons on Living One Day at a Time. He holds a PhD in Economic Geography from Western University, specializing in mergers and acquisitions and foreign direct investment. In 2003, Dr. Aliberti had a life-changing situation that brought him to serve God and all of humanity to the best of his ability in every action that he takes. He regularly speaks on the topics of leadership, organizational effectiveness, addictions and recovery, resiliency, and spirituality. And today, we're probably going to be talking about his newest book, which is called A Hero's Journey, Soulful Leadership. we got a lot to talk about. So please welcome Dr. Vincenzo Aliberti. Yay! It's great to have you with us.
Look, you can tell we're all Toastmasters because we do.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
right.
incredible.
And he's a Toastmaster, just like Todd and I.
It's incredible being on the show. I'm telling you, this is. I'm just grateful. It was great meeting you at that summit, Jackie. I tell you, I've been waiting for this show. I'd say for the last little while, last 2.5 weeks, and there's just given the last book that I wrote, certain words really resonate with me. Peace being the very first one, spirituality being one, and I'm just wondering what words come to mind, right now for you, if any.
Well, I think for me, I am so inspired by your victorious story that, we all have challenges that we go through in life, and we can decide whether to be victims of those stories or to be victorious over the trauma. And so I look at you today, Vincenzo, and I say, that is a man who's been victorious over a lot of life challenges. And that's what I hope we talk about today, because we're heading into some strange places in the world, and we are in for some challenges, I believe. And it will be nice to know ways that we can cope with those. So that's what I'm thinking of today.
I like it.
For me, it's just remembrance, because I watched a video that you did on YouTube, and you were telling the entire story of your sobriety and how you came to it. And I was like, this guy's been in my head because he knows my story. Because there were so many similarities on how we got there. And I mean, I was a huge success, and everything was going good, but I couldn't stop drinking. And the more I would tell myself I'm not going to do that again, when I got up in the morning, I'd do my tasks and then start drinking right as I was done. Couldn't wait to get there and drink myself into oblivion, and then wake up and do it all again and say, I'm not doing that again, but I did it anyway.
That's the exact same way I was. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd exercise, take the train, wherever I worked, the city that I worked, did all my tasks, like you said, and then right after work, I head to the bar. I go, this time I won't go to the bar. I'll just go walk right by it. Maybe just have one beer, and then that's it. One beer, and that's all good. I could not do it.
Yeah.
Todd, how did you end up stopping? What made you?
Well, it took three trips to treatment, and the final trip to treatment, I just realized, look, this, you got to change your ways. You have to do something different. And in treatment, we went through the 12 steps kind of in a quick, fast way. And I just realized that I was not going to be able to do this by myself without help from a higher power. And I totally got on my knees and gave up. I just totally gave up and gave my life and my will over to a power greater than myself.
Yeah.
And the funny thing of it is, once I did that, the miracles began to occur. And it's not that I had belief in them. It's just more evidence. And then I got to the point where I demanded proof. Okay, I'm in this deal. I'm in with both feet, but I need proof. And one magical day, some things just happened that are well far beyond coincidence. I think they call it synchronicity. and I knew right then and there, okay, there's your sign. And I explored spirituality and came to a realization that my life could be totally different if I worked at a different program. It didn't include drugs and alcohol.
Yes, it's incredible, because I had to reach a very low point as well. And I was at the point where, at the time I was living in Chicago, and you'd hear these stories about people jumping in front of a train, right? And there was I think it was a yellow line. There was a yellow line, and every day I would think about, okay, today's the day you're going to be one of those people. Or I get drunk to the extent where I'd walk on the railroad track in the hope that I get hit by a train, right? And the thing is, I didn't realize I was so blissed out of my mind. I was so drunk that I didn't realize that, hey, yeah, the train stops after a certain time. So I was walking well past that time. 2 or 3 in the morning. Now it's amusing, right? And similar to you, it was that spiritual path, right? It took me a long time though, because the ego kept on coming up. Vincenzo, you can do it yourself. You don't need anybody else. You don't have a problem. It's everyone else. Everyone else is against you, type of thing, right? And the fact of the matter is, I was a mess.
Mhm.
Mess. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I wanted to be. I didn't know who God was at the time. I was Christian. I still am Christian, and I just simply didn't know who I was as a human being, and that really tore me apart. You have your PhD, academic, all Canadian, NCAA scholarship, blah 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 blah.
All the success in the world doesn't give you the magic. The magic comes from a connection with the power greater than yourself and turning your life and your will over to it. How
do you accomplish so much? Like, how do you get a PhD when you're not fully present all the time because of the alcohol that's in your system on a constant basis?
For me, it was just pure drive. Extreme horsepower and overcoming, and just drive, baby, drive. So I don't know I'm sure it's the same for Vince too.
It's similar, because even though there were roadblocks along the way, it was just pure drive.
Run over them.
It was just pure out and out drive, never giving up. And that's the thing, right? When you're drinking, if everything's going so well, why should you give up? That drive is still there. But the thing is, that drive was also in substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the spirituality, I remember December 13, 2003, when I buckled to my knees in Wheaton, Illinois. And I said, God, I'm not doing that today. Tonight I'm going to either live or die. And it still took me years after that just to really connect with God. I still wanted that ego. And I don't know if it was the same for you, Todd, or...
It was a spiritual exploration. I mean, we have to, at least for me, I had to explore myself. I had to understand who I was and what spirituality was and what spirituality meant to me and how that connection grew. And I went on many, many journeys, spiritual retreats and all kinds of things to find that, right? To explore that. And what I came up with was everything I was looking for was already in me. I just had to open it up.
Amen. I agree with you 100%. It's funny, in the same way that you went to all the retreats, that led me to write this book, A Hero's Journey, Soulful Leadership, because if you look in it, it talks about Stoicism and all the different techniques of Stoicism, Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, Taoism, the Huna Way, all these different philosophies. But it ultimately came down to, I had everything within, but what was within? Now, it's a simple thing where, even as I'm speaking to you, I'm saying Christ within.
Mm-hmm.
And that Christ within is, whether it's whatever's on the outside, good, bad day, whatever, when I say Christ within, I'm at peace, man. And that was the hardest thing for me to have, peace of mind, regardless of the situation. People had a very difficult time through COVID. And I'm going to say this just only from a personal perspective. For me, it was fine. It was absolutely.
That's funny, because that's me too.
No, and the thing is, and I saw everyone
freaking
out, and please understand, have all due respect to everyone else and their journey. It's just that I was at peace throughout, and I knew that peace through my Christ consciousness and praying and meditating really made me see the world quite differently than most individuals. I know that they were real. Some people were passing away and so forth. But just COVID is just an example, right? I'm just saying, throughout life, I don't know about you, Jackie, but is every day perfect? Or do you have obstacles? Maybe for you it's perfect, but for me, I can tell you it's not, right?
No.
How do you deal with maybe the ups and downs? Like, I know how I deal with them, but I just want to hear from your perspective.
Well, it's interesting in the last couple years since Todd has introduced me through this show to so many amazing and talented people with spiritual gifts that I don't think I ever doubted, but never actually got to talk about in depth with. And so I have started meditating, and I do Qigong.
No
And
way.
yeah, and so I started to realize, just like Todd discovered, that everything's inside of you. It's just a matter of finding it. And for me, being raised in a religious home, I was very rules-based. And yet, because I grew up in an abusive home, I didn't really have a connection to parents. And so to think of, I always thought of God as a heavenly father, but even that was a lack of connection for me because I didn't really understand the father-daughter relationship because I didn't have it necessarily as a mortal either. So, so that's been something that I've struggled with, is how do I thought that was my only route to spirituality, but I have discovered that there are lots of other ways to feel the spirit and to connect with the spirit, and increase that energy and vibration that's inside of you. David Hawkins, I've read his book, Power versus Force, and I learned a lot from that about how, it's the way that we view the world is going to make a difference in how things go for us. So
yes,
I don't have a perfect day, but I can see it from a different perspective every day, so that I don't look for perfection. I just look for ways to have that peace that we're all searching for. And it doesn't come from outward stimuli. It comes from within.
I think about that a lot. And if it were a perfect world, Vince, we wouldn't be here.
You're right.
There would be no point, because it would be perfect, and perfection is nothing, really. I mean,
it's incredible that we're having this discussion. And I don't know about the two of you, but once I became more spiritual, once I admitted that I was an addict, and
it's the first step.
It's a very first step, and I still go to 12-step meetings. I mentor people and so forth, I sponsor people. And the whole point is just letting go.
Yeah.
It's not me, man. Get out of myself. Who the heck do I think I am? Just get out of my own damn way.
Right.
So you are a friend of Bill's.
I am a friend of Bill's.
Okay. I was trying to figure that out watching some of your other videos, and I didn't come out and ask it outright. I thought maybe your exploration was more of a spiritual one, because, people do find solutions in God, but I didn't realize that you actually were a friend of Bill's. So that's cool.
Yeah, I'm a friend of Bill's. However, the spirituality element preceded my connection with Bill. And it's quite incredible, because even as I'm speaking with the two of you right now, I feel I'm in total peace, man.
Mm-hmm.
I am in total peace, because this discussion is something that people need to hear. And the reason being that I'm really concerned about people's mental health over the last few years, especially given that I'm the executive director of a treatment center, an addiction and recovery center.
Oh.
And what's interesting is that I've worked the spectrum, so to speak, in that I see people that are homeless. I see people that I've worked with billionaires. I've worked with millionaires. I've worked in Fortune 100 companies, yada, yada, yada. But people are people. And regardless of where they're at, it's their journey. but their mental health, whether you're wearing a suit and tie or you're homeless, people are struggling. And that's why peace is the number one priority, because it enables me to connect with God, my higher power, and to see people for who they truly are. Right? To me, I couldn't care less if you have 50 Mercedes or you're just asking for, like tomorrow night, for example, I'm going to hand out coffee and hot chocolate to those at a shelter here in Alberta. And people are people. And right now, I really believe that if they connect to their higher power, their spiritual side of things, the internal side of things, that their life could be so much better than it currently is. But that's just my take on it, right? Everyone's on their own.
Well, I think you have a valid point, because the ancients knew that a religious belief, we can say what we want about religion, but a religious belief led people to an understanding of their own personal spirituality, one way or another. That's what that was about. Whatever else the religion organized, that's what it was about. And I think today, we can almost say that the New York Times said God is dead, and people are believing that. Right? They have totally gotten away. Religion is probably one of the most dying things in our society, and people don't have that resource. And look what we have. I mean, that's my personal opinion, and that's what I think. That's what I see.
This is great that we're having this discussion again, because our specific center is very Christ focused. Now, what I mean by that is we're all Christ's children. So whether you're an atheist going on your journey, or someone that is a Buddhist, Taoist, whatever religion, philosophy you abide by, we welcome everybody, right? But ultimately, it's about God and compassion, kindness, and love. We don't push anyone away. And our actual program, the Genesis program, is Christian based. It's also heavily medically evidenced, and I'm really excited because it's the Christian, the spiritual side, which is it's really going to help them out throughout their journey, and because it'll give them an opportunity, give men the opportunity, because it's for 40 men, 18 plus, that will give them an opportunity to really be vulnerable. And a lot of people think that courage is over here and vulnerability is over here, when in fact it's right here, right?
Yeah.
Right. Brené Brown, I believe, mentions that as well, and I really enjoy listening to her. I think she's a professor at the University of Houston. Unless you're able to be vulnerable, which takes a tremendous amount of courage, to see who you really are, to find out who you really are, to have that introspection. By you taking the time to do that, you better get to know who you really are and how you could better connect to the universe. In my case, it's God. Than otherwise. Otherwise, we're simply going to, okay, I'm alive, and then eventually will be the day that I die, and that's
well. We. So wouldn't you agree? It's just a loss of hope, really. There's nothing to believe in. There's nothing. I exist and I react to things, and then I go to sleep at night and I wake up and I get up, and then things happen. I react, and good, bad, or indifferent, I have my opinion about what just happened to me. And it was, it could be not good. And then I'm going to live with that. And I have no reason to turn it over or to understand how those things happen.
It's I'm glad you mentioned that, because the word that comes to mind, two words: consciousness and awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I'm saying that is, for example, Todd, Jackie, in your difficulties, no matter what happened, would you believe that until you were aware consciously of what was going on, and be able to, and I use surrender in a positive way, surrender in a way that you accept what happened, you move forward
And move on.
But then it's also a part of consciousness, something that's really much greater than myself. to consciously connect with God, that we're able to respond rather than react.
You know what helped me with that thought? And I learned this early on in my spiritual journey, is look for the gift, right? It could be the biggest life's a mystery, and it could be a mystery, but there's always a gift in no matter what happens. So that got me not to react, and then to put up my radar for the gift. And then I would always fashion or reason, look, here's the gift for this action. This is really cool. And that changed my whole concept of how that all worked.
You know, I never heard about it that way, but it's true. Whether it's good, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, whether what happens, what you see in the external world, whether it's good, bad, if you label it, or neutral, assuming you label it, that if you consider it to be a gift, how do I respond to this rather than react and panic? I really like that.
Yeah, it changed my whole outlook. That's for sure. A lot of things did. I mean, you can think just in this discussion today, it's just, I'm going back in time, Jackie. We've created a Life Mastery Radio time machine.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're referring to, both of you, as I listen to your conversation, is what a lot of the greats will talk about, is that it's your mindset. And Vincenzo, you call it awareness, and consciousness. But when you start to focus, like Todd says, on the gift or the blessing of this situation, then you look for that to happen. I think it was Pam Grout that talked about when she wanted a particular type of car, a yellow colored Volkswagen, for instance. She started to see them everywhere. It's because that's what she was desiring. She wanted herself, and she was looking for one herself, so that she started seeing them everywhere. They were always there, but she didn't notice them before because it wasn't something she was focused on. So when we're focusing on the opportunity, we're focused on wealth, we're focused on money, we're focused on growth, we're focused on peace, whatever it is, when we start to focus on that and think about it, then it begins to appear. And we start seeing it everywhere. It begins to manifest itself. Yeah, now that happens in the negative side too, that if we believe that the world is a hateful place and that it's creating more victims than it's helping people, then we also view those things. Those things come into view for us, because whatever it is, whatever we're looking for, we're going to find validation for it. Yes. Right? And so that's changing the mindset, either in a positive way or a negative way. And as Todd was mentioning, that so few people belong to a religion now. And, the ancients would teach their children spirituality. I mean, it was part of their culture to believe in a certain being. And that's not happening any longer. So we're seeing that the last couple of generations of children not being brought up with a Sunday church, or a synagogue or anything like that. But what I've discovered is that if we don't belong to a religious group, we have this innate need to belong to something.
A tribe. Yeah.
And so what's happening is people politics become their religion. Certain organizations become their religion. A particular issue or something like that, whether it's global warming or whether it's healing our oceans, whatever it might be, that becomes their religion, and that's the group that they glob onto. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's something we need to be aware of, that we have the desire to belong. We need to belong to something. And so if it's not religion, it's going to be something else. And that's what's changing, I think, our planet is we don't have necessarily the spiritual guidance anymore. We're basing all of our moral values on people or things. And that's the bad part of it, I think. So I don't know what you have to say about that. I know, Vincenzo, you've studied a lot of philosophies and a lot of religions. What did you find in your journey in that regard that maybe are common or that are different with all of those different philosophies?
The number one thing that I found was, and Todd alluded to this already, Christ within. So everything is within you. I've noticed that in a lot of different philosophies and religions. I also realized that, and this is only because it was in me, control, that, for example, Taoism I found quite intriguing because it's about effortless action and being able to respond rather than react. I found that quite interesting. In Buddhism, the Eightfold Path was quite powerful. Right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, mindfulness, and right concentration. The Huna Way, energy flows where my attention goes. Mindset is very important. But everything, and the word awareness comes to mind, because until you're aware of these philosophies, these religions and so forth, and for me, Christianity has been monumental because it's all about the Christ within and thy will be done. It's not about me. And whenever I put myself in the center, that's when I suffer. That's what I've noticed about myself. Whereas, no, but it's true.
It is true.
I believe in, I remember I was working somewhere a few years ago and in Calgary, Alberta. And this guy comes in my office and he goes, Vince, you have to stop giving, this selfless action. You got to be more selfish. And I was like, what? What are you talking about, man? It's just, see, the thing is, by that selfless action, that Christ within, connecting to your higher power, doing what needs to be done selflessly, that more comes. I come from a place of abundance rather than a place of fear. And respond to everything accordingly rather than react. And a lot of the commonalities were around that, for the various philosophies and religions, right? Coming from a place of stillness. I call it Christ consciousness, connecting with God. Other people call it silence within, stillness, what have you. And then respond rather than react. But it ultimately comes from a level of awareness, right? If you're not aware, then you're always going to be going all over the place and not being still. And Jackie, I believe you mentioned meditation. You meditate.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's huge.
I'm just wondering what impact that had in your life.
Oh, well, a lot. I mean, I still do it every day. I try different meditations, but they all have to be guided. I have a hard time doing it without some guidance. So they're all guided, but like Dr. Joe Dispenza, yes. I recall about a year or so ago, I was healing from a neck injury because of a traffic accident. And in the midst of this meditation with Dr. Dispenza, which was probably a 40-minute guided meditation, and he makes you really act with intention in your breathing and everything like that. And he talks you through breathing up through your spine all the way to the top of your head. And as I was doing that, I actually could feel the bones in my neck realigning as I was doing this in meditation. I mean, it happened not just once, but several times. And so I could actually feel that because I was engaged in this in this different place consciously, I actually healed my neck. And so it's had a tremendous impact on me. Absolutely. I mean, it's to know that it's powerful. And I think maybe that's what you were saying is the commonality between all these philosophies and religions is that the core teaching is you are powerful in your own mind. You are powerful in your own right. And because of this divine nature that you have, you need to focus in on the power that you have and outwardly show it in a positive, good way for the world, right?
That comes from a connection, though. I mean, your focus needs to be on that connection with that power greater than yourself. And there's a reason that the Tao and Buddhism and Huna and they're still around today, right, Vince? Because they work and people get sustenance from that.
I couldn't agree with you more. And there are so many different tools. Like, for example, because I'm in the addiction.
And let me just say this, that's part of the exploration, is finding and trying and exploring the differences and deciphering what works for you.
Yes. I like that you said that, because what works for you may not work for me or may not work for Jackie. And I understand. I understand that. I remember, it's not that I'm a CBT practitioner, but I looked at all different techniques that are in cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, a lot of different therapies. And what I've done is, because I love research, I love digging, getting information. And I went back to Stoicism, which is written in a book, and there's so many different techniques from Stoicism that are present in today's therapies. It's incredible, right? And now the beautiful thing about it is, by being centered, Christ-centered first, and now I have the ability to use all these other techniques, which are more or less like add-ons, right?
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost is the Christ-centeredship. And like things like view from above. I visualize myself, I'm having a tough day as if I'm on top of the planet.
I call that third-party perspective, right?
See? It's the same thing. Yeah.
You're looking and being a witness instead of being a part of it.
That's exactly it, right? There, and again, different names, but it's the exact same thing. Or I think it's a death meditation where initially I was like, what is this? But I was intrigued, and it's not morbid in any way. It's just realizing that we all have a certain amount of time on this earth. And by really looking at what's important through this death meditation, literally going through as if someone's burying you, putting dirt on top of you, and you name it. I mean,
Wow.
I read that in your book, and I was intrigued because I hadn't come across that before. But you know what I was reminded of is the ancient Egyptians and their thing they had called the Book of the Dead, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody went to a priest and got their own Book of the Dead, and this was before the Bible, and this was a guide, right, allowing you to obtain morals, principles, and values along with your life. And then there was a section, what happened afterwards, and that's what came to my mind, because these books of the dead actually were personalized to a person, and it gave them morals, principles, and values, because they knew that if they didn't do these things, and then ultimately their heart was weighed against a feather, and if that feather weighed more, they were going to hell, or a place like hell. And I was reading what you were talking about with your meditation on death, and it took me back to that. It was fascinating.
No, and the Book of the Dead is fascinating. I haven't read it in its entirety, but I like the way you explained it. The same principle. You really, and it's funny because
it's humbling, right? Isn't it?
Humility is so important, right? Because living a life that is full of being a morally good person, a person of character. In Stoicism, they have 4 specific virtues: courage, justice, temperance, which is basically patience, and wisdom. Those are the 4 key ones. And it's almost like a template or blueprint to living a good life, as some of the ancient Stoics I mentioned, Epictetus in particular. But there's a lot of wisdom in this show, us 3. I wouldn't put myself in Epictetus's shoes, though. He's or Seneca, or some of Marcus Aurelius in particular, because he was an emperor, a Roman emperor, but a very virtuous emperor. He had his whole entire empire, the whole world at his disposal. And he just led with pure virtue, battles with virtue, personal and national battles. And it was just, it was just incredible. Yeah.
Sometimes I think about what the world needs today. What we need today is a Moses. We need
you have the beard. You have the beard.
We need a Moses to come down off the mountain and reestablish or reintroduce the 10 Commandments. Because if you look at it, Moses's people were just totally off the wall and doing all these different things. And here comes Moses with the 10 Commandments, and here are the rules for the road, and it changed everything.
Yeah, but it took them 40 years to be able to get it all together.
Time takes time. Time does take time.
And but it is interesting that you liken things to Moses, because, the Israelites were slaves, literal slaves. And so they had now received this freedom, but they had never been free. So they didn't know
what they didn't
how to behave as free people. Yeah. They only knew idol worship, right? Yeah. And so that's what they turned to, is what they knew. Moses had to destroy that way of thinking, and it took them 40 years to change that way of thinking. And so here we are on a planet that, in a lot of ways, figuratively, we are slaves of thought processes. We are slaves to traditions. We are slaves to the way that we think the world is. And something has to happen to break that thinking, because we are worshiping idols rather than worshiping true power that means anything.
And a power greater than ourselves.
Yeah, so it might, maybe we're already in that 40-year cycle, or maybe we haven't entered it yet, but there is some correlation to that, I think.
Well, I really like what you said about Moses. And by the way, I have a good cane. I'm not saying I'm Moses, but I have a good cane. Someone can borrow.
Does it have a serpent on it?
No, it doesn't have a serpent on it. But again, this is the first full circle back to spirituality. And again, it just ties into, I think, a peace. And I do wish peace amongst everybody. In some cases, the peace that people are not able to have is simply because the spiritual element is not there. And
it's not.
It's not.
And people aren't, and I hear about every once in a while, somebody will say, oh, wow, I've discovered this, or I read about this. And do you know more, or where can I find out more information? People are hungry for it. They just have to be exposed to it.
Yeah. So Vincent, Vincenzo, in your book, you talk about 6 powerful steps, or 6 important steps, I think you mentioned, that helped you to change and heal. Do you want to maybe touch on those for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me put my glasses on here. The very first one is awareness.
We talked about that.
Yeah. The next one is, which was very hard for me, surrender. I mean, no one that I know wants to surrender. Just even a simple thing, we're having a discussion around the table in a meeting, and people giving 1 point, conceding 1 point. Sometimes it's like almost like that, life and death for them, But being able to surrender, and along with surrender, it's making sure that you're ready. And if you're not ready, no matter how much you surrender, you're still going to be in that spiral, right? Then it's really about being receptive to what comes your way. And that requires surrendering. It requires a great deal of the next step, acceptance. Accepting things that the way you see the world is not necessarily the way it is, right? That leads into perspective, right? Because just because you believe something is the way it is based on your previous cognitive filters doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it is, right? It's what you think. And so sometimes it has to be the redefinition of perspective, right?
Mhm.
And then the last one is action, because if you don't act, forget about it, right? I remember when I ended up getting my doctorate, I worked with this lady in Chicago, and she was a very good leader. But I was a visionary in the sense that I had ideas come. They used to come, especially with the booze. I hate to say this, but sometimes with the booze, with the alcohol, I was a little bit more creative than without it. At least that's what I thought. But this lady, I called her the executioner, right? The action-oriented person. And that's one of the things that I was missing. It wasn't until I could have all the first 5 steps, but it wasn't until I acted and figured out, made my mistakes along the way, my journey, picked up a few lessons to learn, and kept on acting, execution, until I came to the realization that my whole purpose in life is to be Christ-centered and serve God. In order for me to have the one thing that I treasure the most, which is peace of mind at all times, I have to give it up.
Mhm.
And that's the reason why I brought up those 6 steps. Yeah.
Action puts you in the flow of abundance. That's the way I understand it. So when you take action, we have our aspirations and we have our dreams, visions, and goals. But if you don't take some kind of action, the universe, God, spirit, Allah, the dude, has no way of bringing that opportunity or that possibility to you unless you put yourself into the flow of action.
Yes.
That's kind of the way it was taught to me, and I view that as the way it works.
And I like that you said flow of action. It doesn't have to be forced. Flow. Right?
Well, that's what faith is. Faith is saying, I believe this can happen, but taking action toward that direction, and not just saying, I'll just sit back and wait for it to happen. That's not faith. That's laziness.
Yes.
Well, and there's one caveat that goes along with this too, is especially with your dreams, visions, and goals, is you have to tell yourself that it's going to be this or something better. Right? That keeps the door to possibility open even more.
I think it's even easier for me to not worry about the outcome and just say, somehow it's going to happen, and I'm not going to worry about the how.
But Jackie, don't you see it as you have to start with the end in mind? And
sure.
Right. So
yeah.
On your way to the store, your way to the drugstore, you might think, oh, wait, I need some bananas, and take a stick, right? And go get some bananas at the grocery store before you go to the drugstore.
Yeah. Well, I think, Vincenzo, you mentioned some questions we can ask ourselves. I think it was in your book that I read that, which is, how can I, or how will I, or what if I, what if I need a new car? Okay. How can I have a new car and then not worry about the how? Just put the action out there, do what you can, and it'll happen for you. Right. But
quickly, because we only have like 2 minutes left.
Tell us about your website. Where can we find you, Vincenzo?
Something, I'm currently working for the Red Deer Dream Center. So it'd be www.rddc.ca. That's www.rddc.ca. It's a wonderful organization. It's a treatment and recovery center, very Christ-focused, and we're here to help.
Very cool.
We're here to help people regain freedom from substance abuse. And I believe that my journey and the people that I'm connected with are doing God's will, including the wonderful board of directors, to do something special and making an impact in people's lives. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I hope you'll come back on the show, because Jackie and I can speak for both of us. We just loved having you on the show today, and there is so much more that we can talk about that we'll have to have you back, and we'll continue this discussion. Thank you so much for showing up as you today, Vincent. I enjoyed our time together.
God bless.
Yeah. Jackie, any quick takeaways? We just have a couple minutes.
Like you said, I thought it was a wonderful discussion. It was just easy flowing. And I appreciate you being open and willing to share all of your trials and your challenges. And the blessings with us as well. So thank you, Vincenzo.
And
I'll say this.
grateful.
Namaste, my friend.
Namaste. I love it.
That's about all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. My big hope is that you'll tell a friend about the show. Hey, I watched this really cool podcast, or I listened to this really cool podcast, and it is divinely guided, because I think today's show was divinely guided. Lastly, two things. Make it a groovy day. I told you how to do it. And make it a great day. Both of those things are all about choice. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Mastery Radio. Join Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery through stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Visit their website, www.lifemasteryradio.com. Join their mailing list and be notified about upcoming guests. That's lifemasteryradio.com.